And we're live with the last session of today's Swarms AI Career Triathlon. We're with Dr. Jess Mendoza. And in the previous panel discussion, we were talking about learning by doing. We were talking about what it means to take on little projects and the shift from looking and frowning upon people doing personal projects as a means to exemplify your competencies to a more favorable outlook of you have to be experimenting, you should be trying new tools and learning new things on your own time because this is a way for you to um, stay aligned with what's coming, with what's happening, all the different tools, all the different methodologies that are coming out. So now we're going to have a bit of a ask me anything session, sort of an open-ended discussion around Dr. Jess Mendoza's work. And with that, Jess, I'd love for you to just give us a little bit of an idea as to who you are, your formal training as a cognitive psychologist, and also where you are now. Like, what is the key focus area of your expertise in the whole AI field?
Okay. Yeah, I can give you that. So, just to add a little more context of my background, as Joaquin mentioned, I do have cognitive psychology under my belt as training. For my dissertation, I focused on understanding what does a relationship with technology look like, and how does that relationship shape the way we think, behave, communicate, get from point A to point B, our memory for things. And after I pursued that, I went on to pursue user experience research, which is the other side of the coin of not necessarily understanding why people are or like how that relationship works, but now building it so that we're building the tools that work in parallel with how people will use them. From there, I saw this big gap of the users being kind of left out of the conversation when AI started to be a thing. Everyone started talking about, oh, we can plug it here, we can use it to do X, Y, and Z. But very few were like, wait, let's talk about the literacy part. Let's talk about who needs to know what about AI, because there's the user experience of like you just using ChatGPT or Claude or anything, you're having an interaction with it. And that can go from that level to you're actually building agents to perform tasks, whether those are voice agents or those are just agents that go out and do things that they don't have voice. But now you're looking at architecture and orchestration. So there's a broad range of how to empower and enable people with those tools. And it can be really overwhelming for the person who's just getting started because you see this, if you imagine the AI circle or the spheres of AI, you have like natural language processing and chatbots, then you have large language models, then you have machine learning, deep learning, neural networks, all of that, right? It could be overwhelming to say, where do I begin? And to the person that's questioning, like they want to go out there and venture on an AI path, I would highly, highly recommend that you begin with understanding where do you want to go? What problems do you want to solve? What are important to you? And then work backwards from there. Start with the foundations of AI, of like what is AI even? Because you hear people saying the AI. The AI can do this. And I'm just like, the AI? Like there's five different or more different spheres. Like which one of those AIs? Like if you're using generative AI, you can say Gen AI. If you're using like machine learning to build predictive models, then use that specific term so that you have direction of who you're going to talk with to advise you and guide you on that way.
Um, yes, I agree. AI has become a bastardized term that is the catch-all for all different facets of computer science, mathematics, algorithms that have to do with codifying our logic and mental models and how we reason through uh, words, right? Some symbolic representation of meaning. Um, but what I like most about what you do and the focus of your work is that it's always been centered around making things accessible for people. And how do you enable people to learn and use and adapt and actually leverage these technologies for their enablement rather than make the fancy assumption that everybody will just get it and you just put it out there and they'll become experts overnight. I mean, it doesn't happen like that. You need some people have the requirement for information to be chunked out, or maybe they need to learn how to absorb it in the format that is right for them, at the space repetition that is
Hmm.
right for them. So, the work that you're doing is kind of what would you call it? It's making AI equitable. It's making it inclusive. It's making it accessible, and you're paving a way for people that otherwise would be left on the sidelines to be able to participate. So that's very cool. So I do have some
Yeah, and
questions.
a lot of the conversations. Oh, sorry, I was just going to add to that. A lot of the conversations I have are like always starting with what are you trying to solve? Where do you want to go? Where are you facing those challenges? And then just show me how you're using it today. And that's where I find the most enlightenment of like I'm seeing their thought process and I can just course correct in real time and then see them improve. So that's super rewarding.
You've you've been applying your knowledge and trying to diffuse and disseminate these useful ideas in a variety of environments, in nonprofits, in for profits, in social environments. You told me you try to teach your grandparents and other people in that age bracket how to reason with AI. Um, from your cognitive psychologist lens, what data are you trying to gather through those interactions, and how is that informing how you engage with other individuals?
Hmm. Trying to think through this one. So, what I observe for when I'm watching those interactions is just the language that people are using to describe what they want to do. And it's so interesting the variance that you see. Um, you can ask somebody to build an app, right? And they're going to build an app. And somebody at this very novice level who has no experience of software development might just say, hey, build an app and it should have 3 buttons that I can use to do X, Y, and Z. And it's simple as that. And it'll do something. It'll get you from point A to point B, but it might not get you that nice looking sleek features that you're expecting, or it might depending on how much you're paying monthly. So and then there's also a discrepancy of like just understanding what context people bring to the table. So again, like I had taught my partner's father to vibe code a website, and he already had this background. He was a engineer in his time. He was in IT, so he had that context with him to actually build something that looked really cool just by natural language. Like once he understood what was happening, he was able to just speak to it. He didn't use text like typing it out. He just spoke to it. So that was really interesting too to see the differences in thought processes. Some people are just better at written language, and some people are just better at verbalizing and letting that you know, spoken out loud language take over. And the systems perform really well in both scenarios. Although I have observed some discrepancies of what they're able to access in voice mode versus typing mode. And we can dissect that later. But yeah, the biggest thing I've observed behaviorally has been how are people thinking about their problems? How much context are they bringing when they're describing their problems? And then how clearly are they able to articulate what they want and that desired expectation, that desired outcome that they want? That those factors are pretty big game changers for the output and the results.
When you're engaging with individuals to make them AI literate, what is the base of knowledge that you're aiming to have them integrate into their knowledge? And what are some of the skills that you would deem, if you were to verify them through a test of sorts, what are some skill based qualifications that you're looking for in an individual you deem as AI literate?
Mm. One of the biggest things is being able to understand that the output is generated by a series of calculations and correlations of how similar the letters, the numbers, the words in the sentence, the syntax, the order of all that, how similar is that all together? And for the user to verify and say, okay, I spotted something in the output that stands out and it doesn't look accurate, that is an indicator of AI literacy because they understand that it's not going to be a tell all, like just because it says so on the output, that's the answer, and I'm taking that for face value. Most people who are power users that I've observed will say, hey, actually, this is right so far, this is right so far, this part is off, and I'll see them course correct in real time and say, hey, for this part, they'll highlight where they want to correct it and they iterate on it. And so it's really cool to see that. The other thing too is data privacy. So a lot of people are very cautious about like what data can they put in. At organizations, it's really interesting to observe when folks are like, hey, is it okay to drop this Excel sheet with all this like customer data into something like OpenAI? And the answer to that depends. It depends on if your organization already approved that tool through their information security process. Like, was it already vetted by the organization security standard? And if it was, then the answer would be, yeah, that's fine. It's been approved, it's been okayed, and you're agreeing that you're not going to make this output be client facing. You're agreeing you're going to use it to expedite your workflow, and you're going to finalize whatever is going to be client facing with the help of AI, but not entirely like just streamline it and boom, here you go, client, my output. I didn't even check it. Like, that's a big no-no. So I would say the ability to evaluate the output, the ability to understand the data policies, and also the ability to, like I mentioned before, articulate your thoughts and your expectations. So that prompt engineering, to break that down into terms that are not as intimidating, it's just communication. Prompt engineering at its core is communication, it's language. So if, the more you practice it, the more you'll get better at prompting, but also get better at identifying where your strengths are as a communicator and where gaps are too, so you could be stronger next time.
That's great. Thank you very much for that. Yeah, problem solving is not something that people are taught systemically in the education system. Um, I'm curious, how do you see the resistance from certain groups, and how do you see the acceptance gradients? Like, what does that split look like, and what are some of the tells or objections that you usually get with the people that resist the adoption of training and usage of these tooling?
So a lot of folks, their biggest resistance is understanding, like, is it safe to use? Because of all the security breaches that we see on the news of like, oh my gosh, Claude and Mythos and OpenAI, like they got hacked and all the data's out there. And I'm just thinking like, we're always hacked, aren't we? So that sucks. But that is the biggest resistance, is people don't want their data to be in the system because it's unclear how long they're retaining it for, who are third parties that have access to it thereafter. That becomes a big blocker for folks. The other big blocker, again, is just being mindful about the effects of the environment, which is beyond the scope of what I'm able to do and cover at this time. But it is something that does prevent people from wanting to explore these tools because they might see the importance of how it excels their workflow and optimize their outputs. But at the same time, it's harming, maybe a local environment that they're in or that their family is in. And that's really hard to grapple with, that cognitive dissonance, that what you're doing is going to have a negative effect, but you also have to keep doing that in your role at work. So those have been the top two that I've seen. But at the very, very beginning, the biggest, most resistance that I saw was just people hesitating to use any form of AI because they didn't understand how it came up with the output. They would just understand that outputs are sometimes false, sometimes riddled with like hallucinations, and that was their reason for like, I'm not touching it. And I was like, really? You're not going to try to explore why it does that? Like, learn why it does that and then get more curious about that whenever you feel that resistance, I would hope that listeners will pause and say, wait, why am I resisting to that? Why am I feeling cautious about it? And once you identify those reasons, lean into why and understand that that's going to really help you grow, because without that, you're just kind of walking away and not giving yourself the opportunity to learn more.
So Excellent. We've been talking about the individual as a subject of knowledge infusion and change and trying to enable one person at a time. But how about in a group setting? What are some of the, I mean, you mentioned in passing when you're working within an organization, depending on their regulatory pressures or customer privacy regulations, they need to be a little bit more careful in how they engage with adopting things that may potentially incur data privacy violations or anything of that sort. Um, what are some of the considerations that come up when you're engaging with an organization?
Hmm. So I'm gonna see if I can repeat that question. So you're saying like a lot of, so in group settings, like how does that responsibility and the data literacy play out in group settings from organization to organizations or just
So,
groups
so,
within
so you,
organizations?
you've spoken about the enablement of individuals and how you qualify individuals.
Mm-hmm.
That's simple enough, right? You can test an individual, you can verify on a
Mm-hmm.
one-on-one basis. However, when you're engaging with a group, it's no longer just a one-on-one; it's a one-to-many, and you have to rely on
Mm-hmm.
resources that are asynchronous. You have to rely on external training and surveying, sampling to see who knows what.
Mm-hmm.
And how do you verify that your efforts have resulted in a win for your change
Mm.
efforts?
Okay.
So I want to understand when you engage with an organization, what are considerations and things that you have to keep at the front of your mind when you want to enable their AI literacy efforts, their programs.
Yes. Yeah. Okay, thank you. Thank you for rephrasing that. So yeah, one of the first things I look at is like where are they today? Where's everyone's AI literacy today? And I also make an emphasis to let others know that it is okay if your baseline is down here because one day my baseline was down here too. And it only goes up after knowing where those gaps are. So starting at that really helps because when you have different groups that are different levels, let's say you want to do a workshop and you might want a vendor to come over and have a host of a wide group of people, but they all have different various levels of their AI literacy or their readiness for using AI in different capacities, like generative AI or agentic AI. So with that, it's really helpful to begin with an assessment of like, where are you today? Are you familiar with these pillars of AI literacy, of responsible AI, of evaluating your outputs, of data privacy, and what happens if there's a risk? Would you know how to manage that? Those types of things. And that way you can really truly give the groups what they need without having like one blanket thing to cover it. I mean, sometimes it happens that way because of scheduling, but usually it's better to separate them and like, hey, everyone's at this similar level, let's take care of this group first and then catch up the next group, or even use the group that is already up in the advanced level to share that knowledge to peer, because it's one thing when you have like a couple subject matter experts about it that can speak to it, but it always helps to have those peer-to-peer interactions because we have different contexts that we've lived through, different ways of breaking down examples that might make sense at different levels to others. So it's always good to have that discrepancy there.
So number one is a systemic audit or a
Mm-hmm.
surveying of what exists today, and then based on
Mm-hmm.
the needs or the demands of the organization and whatever kind of efforts they're trying to affect, then you're going to benchmark their change over time as you introduce stimulus, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And
And also like not just the individual, like so one thing to know importantly is not just the individual for like their level of AI, but it's more than a one-off task. Like, how adept are you in using generative AI to summarize emails, to produce documents? Like, that's a one-off task. But to have individuals, like, once you assess them, the next step would be okay, let's all take a look at our workflows because there are some instances where we will not want AI to touch those areas in the workflows. For one reason or another, we just know this shouldn't be touched by AI. And these are things that could be touched by AI. They could help us get there faster. They can maybe augment the way we do things, or maybe we can even build a new way around it. So that kind of like pairs after the survey assessment. Understanding it is like understanding the workflows as a whole is super important.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. And the champions, right? Who is someone that can help propagate the change across the organization and is going to be an ally in your change management effort? Um, to me, that sounds like a community. So, would you call that a community? How do you engage with that kind of group that is wanting to take part in this
Mhm.
exercise with agreeableness, that they're accepting and embracing of change?
Yeah, so different organizations will have like because it depends on the size, right? Like if you have a larger organization, you might have multiple champions, or some folks call it communities of practices, whatever it is that you call it, like a, I don't know, a village of learners, whatever it is you want to call it. You want to set a cadence where people have a safe and protected time and space to play around with these tools, to ask the questions that they, might feel hesitant to reach out and ask for, because it only makes sense if they're able to share their screen, right? So with those instances, it is helpful to have other peers to lean on. And I did see something on OpenAI's site, like they have a OpenAI Academy has some resources on AI champions. AI champions, the definition of that is something that sounds more formal than it is. And if you're a listener right now and you hear this description, you probably are already an AI champion. So I'm going to go ahead and describe it. So you're an AI champion if you already are clicking around and finding out how these tools work just for fun, because you are curious about the different models. You're curious about creating different agents or different prompting styles to build things. But more than that is you're bringing that curiosity and those findings that you have, and you're sharing them with others so that they too can be empowered to do just exactly what you taught them to do and even more. If that sounds like you, you're already an AI champion and you don't need a title or any formality to it. That's just something that you're, you know, in this day and age, that title works right now, but you don't have to feel like, oh, nobody has deemed me the champion, so now I can't go. Like, you could go out and empower people however you want. You can go to your retirement center and say, you know what? I'm going to create senior AI champions here. And you do that by sharing your knowledge and making sure that they can replicate the same things that you taught them, and you might learn a thing or two in between.
Interesting. We've talked about the individual. We've talked about the collective group. Um, how does your background in cognitive psychology inform your work as you're doing the sampling and administration and program change management across potentially simple to complex organizations?
I think in a lot of ways, psychology has helped me the most with, I mean, obviously for a reason, the most with understanding people, and not just like the thought process behind people, but what drives people, what motivates people, helping me understand those pain points in between when I hear them talking about a problem. Sometimes that problem is not because of the technology, sometimes it's because of a process, sometimes it's because of people in that process. It really depends. Because sometimes roles are unclear, like no character flaws on the people that you work with. I mean, some organizations might experience that, but sometimes it's beyond the technology. And that's where I really tend to pick up of like, wait, what you're describing right now, it doesn't matter what account you have with these platforms. It doesn't matter if you have the $100 a month version of it. If you do not center on the people and the processes and make sure that those are squared out, like those are smooth, everyone understands their role. And if their role is changing, have we had a conversation as a group of like, how are our roles changing? How is our collaboration going to look like in this day and age with AI in the process? How's our process going to change? Is it going to change a lot or a little? Or maybe we can map out what it looks like today and what it looks like tomorrow with AI integrated in different areas. Those things are what really matter to understand. But you can't have that if people aren't willing to be open-minded, if people aren't willing to share their experiences and all of that. It does take a lot of heavy lifting on the psychological side to understand, okay, in order to engage with people, you have to know who you're engaging with, what's important to them. Because what's important to engineers and to people in distribution or sales or people in product management, all those three different personas, they might have one overarching goal is to move the company forward, but how they do it is different. So understanding that and then how that interacts with each other really helps move things forward.
Yeah, 100% agreed. If the incentives aren't aligned, even if the program looks to be successful on paper through sampling, even if people have the knowledge and have the skill, they might not have the motivation, the desire to accept those changes over the long term. Once it stops being enforced from the top down, they might just decide to do things the old way, right? I mean, how do you ensure that the change that you've enabled sticks and that the people that
Mhm.
do need it or can use it are able to benefit from it instead of having everybody just reluctantly take it on and then just let go of
Right.
it as soon as opportunity allows.
Exactly. Yeah. And another thing to add to that is it goes a long way to have leadership support and people from, that higher level to come down and say, hey, we know this change is overwhelming. We know it's work on top of the work we've already got going, but we're going to protect time for you so that you can work and upskill at the same time. And here's X amount of hours that these are dedicated hours for learning and upskilling, and that's protected and it's not going to go against you if we had to extend a deadline or so, because this is just as important as the work that's already there. It has to happen in tandem, and people need to feel supported and they need to understand they're safe, they're valued, no matter if their role and their title change, they still have something to add, because AI can do many things, but if you do not have a subject matter expert as a driver, you're screwed. To be blunt, you're screwed. Like you need to have those people with subject matter expertise and that institutional knowledge. So take care of those people and make sure that they feel their worth within the organization, because otherwise they are at risk to leaving to your competitors or in general. And you don't want that, especially if you are a large organization.
This is the last question, and this is more of a strategic organizational concern. How do you manage and balance innovation with responsible AI adoption and responsible governance?
That's a tough one, because with agentic AI, every, like, for example, a tool called Cursor or even Claude Code or Codex. With those tools, you can build any sort of solution. You could build little microservices, right? But should we be building those microservices? Should we be using our time to do that? That becomes the question. So when when you go about asking, like, how do we balance that and that governance, like, it goes back to, first of all, where are you? Are you a freelancing consultant? Are you just one person running the event to allocate time for that? If you are part of like a small business and you don't have those technical skills and you're running your small business, but you have some resources to go and invest in somebody that does have those skills to help you out, accept the help and see if that can help you get in line with the competition of having AI products or having AI in your system so that your processes are more expedited. And then if you're in a larger organization, again, it's harder with that, because like you can only manage so many microservices, like who's building what. You don't know when they're going to build it, right? So it's goes back to understanding that roles and responsibilities and how is what that user is doing or what that person at your organization is doing, are they innovating things that are aligned with your business values, with your vision for the organization? And if they are, then that would be an acceptable way to go about, because it's staying aligned with what your organization needs to move forward, instead of just like, I'm gonna build this really cool thing so that I always know what books my homies at work are reading. And it's like, that's not adding to the value streams. That's a fun project, a pet project you can do at home, but you don't want to use the company's resources to do so. So,
That's an excellent point as well. That the rate of innovation and inventiveness is now no longer the limiting factor. If you want to create something, you can do it in 24, 48 hours over the weekend, and you can deploy it on Monday. But how do you ensure that it fits within the broader context of the business? It adds value. It is welcomed, right? You can't just drop in a book club database resource manager on everybody's head on Monday. Um, does it conform with the needs and wants and protocols and policies of the organization? That's a much bigger question to kind of tease out with the organization itself as well. Um,
mhm.
and would you want to rely on something that was vibe coded when it might not meet the scrutiny and demands of what an enterprise solution is meant to have, right? That's another
Yep.
question.
Yeah, yeah, that's a really dangerous assumption that a lot of folks tend to make from what I see on like industry reports or like even on LinkedIn is that many people think like, okay, we can build this cool thing. Now we can get rid of all our vendors and our contractors. And I'm like, wait. Do you know about how the systems are connected? So like really learning what's that? I'm blanking out on it, systems thinking, right? Because everything is interconnected. There's ecosystems that if one thing disappears, some entire thing might break. You don't know, but you want to have those conversations early. So understanding where does this process fit? How does it work? Who's involved? And where does it need to go next? And when it does go in that direction, what other systems will it touch? Who else will be involved? Involved or evolved. So, yeah, evolved with new skills. So, yeah, those are kind of things to keep in mind.
And it's kind of aligned with the initial assessment that you made as well. I mean, you looked at the current knowledge, skills, competencies, attitudes of the people that you're engaged with, as well as the workflows. But that also applies to the technical aspects of it. If you change one thing,
Mm-hmm.
how is this gonna unravel and touch upon or impact other downstream systems? You
Mm-hmm.
don't know until you start
Right.
auditing and keeping track of the inventory of items that you have, software solutions that are held together with duct tape and rubber bands.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely.
Well, Jess, thank you very much for giving us your time. Is there anything else that you think might be relevant and important for anyone that is maybe hesitant to claim the title of a champion, AI enabler, translator? Do you have any words of
Yeah.
affirmation?
Um, I would always say start somewhere because no matter where you start, the time, don't worry about how long it's going to take you to become an expert to get good at something because time's always going to be continuously moving like this. But if you hesitate for too long, time's going to keep moving and you're going to stay in that one spot. So if you start today and like another day, little increments at a time add up to growth. So I would encourage you take it one step at a time. Start with what problems are most meaningful to you, and then work backwards from there. Of okay, based on these problems that are most meaningful to me, how and when, which types of systems can I use so that I can contribute to a solution for this problem, and then start there.
Thank you, Jess. I appreciate you
Mhm.
taking the time to share your knowledge and take part in the Swarms AI Career Triathlon. I'm hoping that people listening in see the change and adoption to these technologies and adapting to the job market demands is not so scary. Everybody has told you do what you can, do when you can, do how you can, whatever you
Yeah.
can, you know? So with that, yeah, I'm happy that you guys have attended. And after this, we're going to present a newsletter that's going to have a list of all the other sessions that have taken place in the previous event series, as well as this one. so you'll have plenty to look at. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for attending.
Of course, don't be scared to click around and find out. Bye.